Barbie, but the fact that Hollywood could take that doll and turn it into an attack on half of the human race, on marriage, on life itself, is a sign of just how sickened our culture has become. I'm going to give you a glimpse of just one scene that's going to give an expose to all the others, and it's going to take it to another dimension. Now, Ben Shapiro did a review of the movie to show how profound the movie is in its dumbness, but I'm going to take it to another realm, that of the spiritual. First, this has to be the most widely distributed anti-man movie ever made. Never before has there been a major motion picture directed at children, girls, to the effect of indoctrinating them against men. Just a few years ago, this motion picture could not even be made as a children's movie, but it shows you how rapidly our culture is changing, or rather deteriorating. What kind of movie it actually is going to be revealed in the text from its actual dialogue. I'm going to read it. It comes from the lips of Barbie herself. She says this: "By giving voice to the cognitive dissonance required to be a woman under the patriarchy, you robbed it of its power." Let me say that again. By giving voice to the cognitive dissonance required to be a woman under the patriarchy, you robbed it of its power. What kind of human communication is that? It's not. It's certainly not normal human communication. It's the kind of sentence you find in a handbook of radical feminism, or a film made by Joseph Stalin's Revolutionary Council, or the Arts for the Propagation of Marxist Doctrine. And that gives you an idea of what we're actually dealing with. Some people would say, well, the movie's just about fun, so why are you treating it so seriously? Well, that's the point. It's not about fun. If it were, you would never have such words and phrases and sentences. That reveals something very serious. When you think of entertainment and children's entertainment, the first two words that come to mind are not cognitive dissonance or the patriarchy. No, those are words that are used in propaganda and brainwashing. And yet it's aimed at your children, particularly at your daughters. And focusing it all on a doll is a brilliant way to propagandize or brainwash children. And because children are impressionable, such things do and will have an effect, as they plant seeds that will impact the future, even of our culture. What about the continual use of the word patriarchy? It's presented as something to be taken as an absolute reality. In this context, it's a buzzword employed in the writings of radical feminism as a specter responsible for all the evils in the world. It's a word used by radical feminists, many of whom hate men, and that it's used over and over again in this movie is no accident, because the movie depicts men as evil or dangerous. At best, they're presented at the beginning just as jerks, useless, inferior creatures with no real purpose. And then, after experiencing the, quote, real world, the men, the evil creatures that they are, begin to take over Barbie land. The men brainwash the women into submission, into being wives, as in marriage, which radical feminism views as something to be destroyed, or agreeable girlfriends, another evil. Why? Because men are evil. That's what men do. Men must be defeated. In this movie, the idea of men and women actually loving each other or needing each other or complementing each other is an anathema. Marriage is rejected for the sake of the sisterhood. Women must separate themselves from men in favor of being with women. Thus, women are not to need men, as they can fulfill all the functions of manhood by themselves without men. And men likewise are not to need women, as they can presumably fulfill all the functions of womanhood by themselves without women. Now imagine a movie aimed at boys that depicted women as inferior, useless, and evil creatures that had to be conquered, and boys or men had to separate themselves from them. What would be the reaction? And yet Hollywood is vilifying half of the human race, and it's okay? So the victory here is when the women conquer the men. How do they do it? By manipulating them, because men are not only prone to evil, but to extreme stupidity, into fighting each other, since men are always ready to explode into violence. And all this is a common technique of propaganda films. Communist propaganda presents capitalists as the problem, antagonists bent on evil. Give them an inch, they'll take over the world, and they'll oppress and subjugate the common people, the proletariat. In Nazi propaganda, the problem is the Jews. who are also bent to evil. Give them an inch, they'll take over society. They'll take over the world. They'll subjugate the Aryan races. It's the same thing here, except that the antagonists here, the dangerous evildoers, are half the human race. And those whose existence with regard to women is actually linked to love and family and life in real life. The separating of man and woman in this movie is not an accident any more than it's an accident that one of the Barbies in the movie is actually a transsexual, or that Barbie alludes to gay masturbation among the Kens in a movie aimed at children. What kind of culture pushes this on children? A sick culture, but it goes deeper. And here's the reveal, and it's there at the very opening of the movie. It's all there. The movie opens up with a scene of girls playing with baby dolls. The narrator says that since the beginning of time, girls have played with dolls. But, note the word but, leading into the idea that there's a problem in this. What is the problem? She says, but the dolls were always and forever baby dolls. Always and forever. Baby dolls are now a problem. And they were an endless, relentless, interminable problem. Just as important are the visuals. The girls are shown with dolls, caring for them as would their mothers, holding them, nurturing them, feeding them, combing their hair. And interestingly, the girls appear unhappy, somber, or miserable, as if they're engaged in an act of slavery that they're forced to be part of. Which is interesting because the scene depicts girls playing with dolls. Note the word playing. You play because you want to play. It's something enjoyable, something you want to do, fun. But the film inverts that and depicts the play as slavery, another subtext of radical feminism. And something else. The opening is taken from Stanley Kubrick's science fiction 2001: A Space Odyssey. That opening. What does that opening scene focus on? Apes. Look at the apes here as they wake up. So the girls now wake up. So now the little girls are put into the place of apes. It's not an accident. It's not incidental. It's central to the scene and to the message. The girls are as apes. In Kubrick's film, the apes represent the primitive. So in Barbie, girls who play with baby dolls are represented as primitive, unenlightened. In other words, motherhood is primitive. Women as mothers, mother and child, it's a primitive, unenlightened, negative state. Again, the doctrines of radical feminism. In Kubrick's movie, to answer the primitive state, an object appears, a monolith, an upright, rectangular stone slab. The apes are puzzled, disturbed, in awe. It's there to change them away from their primitiveness, their lowly state. So to answer the primitive state of women, as in motherhood, an object appears as a monolith, but it's Barbie. She stands above them as a colossal goddess or a towering idol of a goddess, and she's there to transform them from their primitive state, linked to motherhood. In 2001, the apes cautiously approach the object, touch it, and back away. In Barbie, one of the girls, or primitive ape people, cautiously approaches the object, just like the apes, touches the leg of Barbie, and backs away. In 2001, the effect of the object is to transform the ape away from primitiveness, apeness, into enlightened apes, and the enlightened apes use bones to kill other apes. But in Barbie, the effect is even more profound, because in Barbie, she winks at them, the girls are mesmerized and transformed by her spell. As the ape lifted up the bone to kill an animal or an ape, the one girl lifts up her baby doll that she's been caring for, and what does she do? She smashes the baby doll against another baby doll, and against the rocks, the head of the baby cracks open, explodes. You see the decapitated head of a baby against a rock, just as the ape smashed the bone into the head of a dead animal carcass. And so the baby's head is decapitated while another baby is smashed into it and onto the ground. And in every direction is an explosion of flying baby pieces. In 2001, the ape throws his stick into the air. So the girl then throws into the air, the sky, the baby, to transform it into the words Barbie. This is the opening of the movie Barbie. It's all there in the very first scene. All that you need to know about the movie, it's all there. It's all exposed. With all its sugarcoating and pink colors and smiles, this is the ultimate spirit behind the movie. And we're going to go even deeper. We're going to expose it with something even deeper. I'm going to come back to this scene at the end, but understand it. We have to look at the mystery of Barbie. Where did she come from? Where did she, what's her origins? Well, the word Barbie means stranger or foreigner. Where did Barbie come from? Came from another land. She came from post-war Germany. She was taken from a German doll named Bild Lily. Her first appearance is a character with a fortune teller. Bild Lily was a form of a sex doll. She was even sold in sex shops. Parents considered her inappropriate for children. She flouted sexual morality. She was depicted as a sex worker, a prostitute. So Bild Lily came to America in the form of Barbie. Look at the two. Look at the pattern of Bild Lily's clothing. Now look at the pattern of Barbie's clothing when she first appeared. That's how she first appeared. It's the same outfit you see in the goddess-like image of Barbie at the beginning of the movie. You see it in the first image of Bild Lily. Yes, Barbie was based on a prostitute. Now let's go even deeper. What does Barbie have to do with an ancient Mesopotamian goddess? I wrote of this key in The Return of the Gods. When a civilization turns away from God, it doesn't become neutral or empty. When it turns away from the Spirit of God, other spirits enter into it. The principle is actually recorded in the Bible in a parable given by Jesus about a spirit that comes out of a man and then returns to the man with 7 more spirits. So when a culture or civilization that has known God departs from God, drives his spirit out, the house does not remain empty. Other spirits enter into it, the same spirits that were cast out of it. That is the foundation of the book, The Return of the Gods. Now, one of the most ancient of these spirits that I reveal in the book is that of a goddess known in the Bible as Ashtoreth or Ashtoreth. In Sumer, she was called Inanna. In Babylon, she was called Ishtar. Ishtar was the goddess of sexuality, sexual immorality. She was always depicted as a young woman. She was depicted as a young woman on her own, independent. She was often depicted as taking roles traditionally assumed by men. She was not the goddess of marriage. She was rarely linked to marriage. Her ways were generally averse to marriage or motherhood. She was the goddess of women who were overall not married. Her ancient literature was pornographic. Mesopotamian culture was filled with her images and idols, figurines, little figures that people kept in their houses. Girls would have undoubtedly looked up to her as a model. As with Ishtar, Barbie is also depicted as an iconic young woman. She's the most widely disseminated figurine of a young woman on Earth, and since the time of the figurines of Ishtar. Her origins were that of a sex doll, as Ishtar was the goddess of sex. Ishtar was a prostitute goddess. She was the goddess of prostitutes and a prostitute herself. So Barbie was based on a prostitute doll, Bild Lily. Ishtar was depicted, instead, as a female independent of males who took on roles and functions traditionally assumed by men. So too Barbie. Ishtar was rarely connected with marriage or motherhood. So too Barbie. A prostitute weakens marriage, and so the worship of Ishtar was corrosive to marriage, and the spirit of Ishtar weakened it along with motherhood, even in our culture now, the return of the goddess. And so the coming of Barbie represents and heralds a turning away from the ideal of marriage and motherhood. And so the girls open the Barbie movie by smashing their babies. As Mesopotamian girls looked up to Ishtar as a model, so modern girls have looked up to Barbie as a model. Ishtar was famous for having a boyfriend. His name was Tammuz. Barbie is famous for having a boyfriend. His name is, of course, Ken. Tammuz was always a secondary character, always in the shadow of Ishtar, in effect an accessory to Ishtar's mythology. Tammuz and his various incarnations were symbols of emasculated men. So Ken was always a secondary character, always in Barbie's shadow, an accessory to Barbie. Ishtar was the active agent in her mythology, while Tammuz was more passive and bland. Barbie is the active agent in her lore, and Ken is the more passive, bland one. In The Return of the Gods, I open up the ancient inscriptions about Ishtar, where it says, she grinds away the masculinity of men. Now, look at the Barbie movie, and look at Ken and the men in the movie. What does it do? It grinds away the masculinity of men. The men there are devoid of masculinity. The spirit of Ishtar inhabits our culture and seeks exactly this, to grind away the masculinity of men and the femininity of women. Ishtar dominates and subjugates her lovers. She even destroys Tammuz. In the movie Barbie, Ken is vanquished along with the other men. Ishtar is depicted as defying male authority. So to the doll from which Barbie sprang, Build Lily, Ishtar sought to bend, break, and subvert conventions, roles, and moral parameters. So too did Build Lily, from which Barbie originated. What about the term and concept of the patriarchy that keeps coming up in the movie? The movie rails against the patriarchy. Ishtar, or Inanna, was the daughter of the ancient god Anu. He was the head of a pantheon of gods, a patriarchy. Ishtar, or Inanna, continually defied the authority of the patriarchy, and thus the war against the patriarchy. It was in the 1960s that America began intentionally removing God from its culture. Barbie was introduced into America just at that moment, as the 1960s were about to begin. And it was in the 1960s that her popularity skyrocketed. Ishtar was the goddess of sexuality, and it was the 1960s in which came the sexual revolution, and in which also came the dramatic weakening and destruction of marriage. The movie advocates that women be separated from men and men from women, whether it's Barbie's rejection of Ken and a marriage proposal to be with women. And the war or separation of men and women in Barbie land comes into play throughout the movie. In The Return of the Gods, I write of the spirits that accompanied Ishtar, and I share this ancient inscription, quote, they tear away the wife from the man's embrace. Again, they tear away the wife from a man's embrace. And I write in the book, so the goddess's most dramatic return to the world would be joined to the spirits that separated man from woman and woman from man, and that would work towards the deconstruction of marriage and the disintegration of the family. So this spirit and the spirit of the goddess tears men away from women and women away from men. They take a wife from a man's embrace and a husband from a wife's embrace. So the spirit inhabiting our culture now removes men from women and women from men. In the movie, the women take up all the important roles of society and the men are separated into meaningless pursuits. So how do you remove men from women and women from men? You do it through the weakening and destruction of marriage. You do it through divorce. You do it by telling men and women they don't need each other, by telling them that the other is a hindrance to them. You do it by telling them that they can perform every role of the other, and you tell them that they can replace the other without the other. Men can replace women and the functions of women, and women can replace the functions of men. You replace them with same-sex sexuality, where men separate from women to be with men and women from men to be with women. You replace them by telling them that one can become the other or be transitioned into the other. That was Ishtar. And that is the movie Barbie. The subtext is men and women don't need each other and are actually hindrances to each other, and men should become separated from women and women from men. And the fact that you have allusions to homosexuality or transsexuality is all part of it. The movie Barbie is a manifestation of the spirit that's been indwelling, inhabiting America, increasingly since the 1960s, since the time Barbie came. Am I saying that Barbie is Ishtar? No. But I am saying that the spirit of the goddess will appear and will manifest in a multitude of manifestations. The gods were icons of their culture, and so the metamorphosis of American and Western civilization is going to manifest in the changing of its icons. Barbie is an icon and is a manifestation of that spirit and that metamorphosis. Even the movement away from the dolls of babies and little children to a doll that came from a sex toy is part of it. It represented the beginning step, the first step, the step of women away from motherhood and marriage to an existence that had no necessary connection to men. And that brings us back to that opening scene. The little girls who, under the spell of Barbie, turn away from motherhood, from caring for their baby dolls, and instead begin to destroy them, it all goes with everything else in the film. Play has a purpose. It prepares children for adulthood. Young animals engage in play based on their behaviors that they'll need as adults. So it's not an accident that girls by nature have always played with baby dolls. It's preparation for motherhood. So what does it mean to have a movie aimed at children where the girls who turn from caring for and nurturing their dolls, they begin destroying and smashing their dolls? If caring for a baby doll corresponds to the caring of a baby, then what does the smashing of a baby doll correspond to? It corresponds to the destruction of babies. It's no accident that the same generation that turned against marriage and motherhood pioneered the killing of over 60 million babies in abortion. It was only about 10 years after Barbie came on the scene that abortion on demand began in America. In the opening of 2001, the apes that have been lifted up by the monolith end up using bones to beat enemy apes to death. A kind of chilling scene. But the opening of Barbie is even more chilling because it represents the smashing not of an enemy, but of one's own baby. What do you think that seed that was planted in the minds of girls who watched that scene in that movie will give birth to? Will they be more likely or less likely to value motherhood and babies? More or less likely to have abortions? And that goes back to Ishtar. Ishtar, in her Phoenician incarnation, or Astarte, in the Bible as Ashtoreth, was also linked to the smashing of babies, to child sacrifice. In fact, some believe that her cult of prostitution helped supply the cult of child sacrifice. And this goes back to something I revealed in the Return of the Gods, that the ancient spirits are first identified in the Bible as the Shedim in Hebrew. Behind the gods were the Shedim, means spirits, as in Ishtar. But the word Shedim in Hebrew is linked to the word for destruction. The Shedim, the gods, the spirits, were the destroyers. Their aim is to destroy, and their strategy is to cause individuals or societies to destroy themselves. And the way they do it is to remove purpose. Men from manhood, women from womanhood, marriage from marriage, boys from boyhood, girls from girlhood, children from childhood, and mothers from motherhood. When you remove purpose, it leads to destruction. In the book, I wrote that the gods are always focusing on the young, the children, because when you get the children, you've got the culture and you have the future. When you remove the purpose of children, then you can destroy marriage, family, gender, a culture, a nation, a civilization. It's no accident that we now have a movement to transition girls into boys and boys into girls. And what more self-destructive act than to cause individuals to destroy their own babies, their children, the fruit of their lives, their future? That's exactly what these spirits did in ancient times. When Israel turned away from God, it's written, they caused their children to pass through the fire. They offered them up. Smashed babies. Think about it. Motherhood and the maternal instinct is vital for life. If you destroy that, or even weaken it, what is it going to lead to? It has to lead to death. And so it did back then, and so it will now. The scripture says we war not against flesh and blood, but against powers, principalities. And this is part of it. Don't be blind to what is taking place. And if the propaganda or attack is sugar-coated, that doesn't make it any less dangerous. It makes it more dangerous. Poison that is candy-coated is more dangerous than poison that is not. Parents, it's your charge and your responsibility to guard your children, your sons and your daughters, from any harm, whether by television, the school system, or the movies. You would not give your children candy-coated poison. Don't take them to see such things. And even if they can't understand why, stay in your homes until the plague has passed through the land, the pink plague. And if they have seen it or similar things, then talk to them. Administer the antidote. What is the antidote? The gods and spirits came into the vacuum of God's absence. The antidote is the presence of God. Don't lead them to the Barbie movie. Lead them to God. Only in God can you find the purpose of womanhood, manhood, childhood, life. Only in God can you find the purpose of your own life. In Messiah, Yeshua, Jesus. He said, let the little children come to me and don't keep them away. For for such is the kingdom of God. He is still the answer, still the way, still the truth, still the light, still the one who gives life, meaning, and purpose. If you want others to see this message, press like. And if you don't want to miss the messages that are going to be coming from this site, press subscribe. And also check out the Facebook page with my name on it and hopeoftheworld.org. Until next time, this is Jonathan Cahn saying, stay strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Shalom.